And I was like, well, I have a year. Go big or go home. Literally, you want to try this thing called, film. And by the way, at that time, I never know like what a film composer actually is. You have 1 year and you have a chance to just have some fun, to come to the media capital of the world and just have some fun, have an adventure.
And welcome to the Orchestrating Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca for short, and I'm a clarinetist who studied at the Eastman School of Music and then went to London to get my master's and PhD, both at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama. Having shifted pathways in my own life, I love hearing about the varied careers musicians can have and how they got there. And that's precisely what we're exploring in this podcast, as I sit down with music graduates to chat about their unique musical journeys, hear their hard-earned wisdom, and learn about how they're orchestrating their own careers. For today's episode, I had the pleasure of chatting with WEIJUN Chen. WEIJUN got his undergraduate degree in composition from the Eastman School of Music and his doctorate in composition from the University at Buffalo. WEIJUN takes us through his musical journey from growing up in Shanghai, China, starting composition at the very young age of 13, and moving to the US to study music and pursue a musical career. Now working as a freelance composer of film and concert music in Los Angeles, his works have been performed by renowned orchestras and chamber ensembles across the United States and China. He also shares about his experience in the fascinating world of composing music for video games. You're listening to a composition by WEIJUN called Drowning from a Chinese movie titled My Country, My Parents. Stay tuned till the end of the episode to hear some more of this beautiful piece. And now let's get right into the interview. Hello, WEIJUN.
Hello.
And welcome to the Orchestrating Your Career podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. It's really nice to have you.
Yeah.
We went to the Eastman School of Music together.
Yes.
And I just knew I had to get you on the podcast because you've been doing some really interesting things. You are a composer, a freelance media composer here in the LA area.
It's a different world.
Yeah. And I think it'll be really interesting to hear what that world is like and your journey to getting into it. Mm-hmm. But before all of that, could you just start us off by sharing how you first got into classical music, and especially how did you get into composition particularly?
Right. So I did not grow up in a musician family. Mm-hmm. However, I definitely think my mother and my grandpa, both of them were very talented musically. Mm-hmm. But what really, I think, got me started was the environment at the time. So I grew up in early 90s in Shanghai, China, which is one of the fastest developing cities in the world at the time. So there were a lot of new ideas coming in. And musically, those were the popular songs at the time. A majority of them came from Hong Kong and Taiwan in that region, but also there were a lot of homegrown artists already at the scene. So there are a lot of songs that are just so well known that everyone can sing at the time. And I think I started singing those songs just completely learn just by listening and just start singing those songs. And what's funny is there are also a lot of TV shows at the time which were completely a very new idea. And everyone was so hooked at the time because, wow, there is, entertainment every night. But every show has a theme song at the opening and a song at the end.
Yeah.
And I just remember, while I was, just watching TV, because, what else could you do? I can sing back those songs very, very easily. And I think, obviously my memory were fuzzy, but my mom told me I would, in our apartment complex, I would, go onto our balcony and just sing songs. And I can replicate those songs very, very accurately, according to her. I don't know. But that's where I think my mom discovered that, maybe, this kid has a talent for music. Mm-hmm. And that's how I started first taking vocal lessons. Mm-hmm. But that's about 6 years old, I think, 6 or 7. We just, kind of just walk through a part of the town. There is this kind of community music school kind of weekend kind of hobby thing. Mm-hmm. So they're, vocal lesson for kids. We're like, sure, let's do it. But I think both of us realized pretty quickly that I did not have the voice. I could not sing the higher notes, and my voice immediately got strained. And the teacher was like, "Yeah, you're hurting yourself." However, the teacher was like, "Well, you're clearly, musically gifted. I can tell that. And my daughter teaches piano. Would you like to take piano lessons instead of vocal lessons?" It's like, oh my gosh, piano, that sounds like the coolest thing, right?
Yeah.
So many keys in front of me.
Yeah.
We had very little growing up, so getting a piano was a big deal. But my mom somehow pulled it off. We got one of the cheapest upright piano we can afford, but that's where everything started, and that's I started taking piano lessons. That's the start of the journey. Now, in terms of how I got into composition.
Yeah.
Well, I hated practicing. And the beginning of few years, the piece that you practice, those are some of the worst. Just you're not making any music. It's so boring and tedious. That's like, man, I wish I can play my own stuff. I think it was just that desire.
Wow.
So I started to, just improvising on the piano while I pretending I was practicing. I think my mom caught on later. She's like, yeah, because every time when I go to the lesson, I could not play at all. And she's like, what have you been practicing?
Not what I was good.
Yeah, but apparently it was good enough to fool her that I was doing something. But anyway, I also started to just write songs, but I think every year I can't remember, 4th grade or 5th grade, we every spring the school will go on a field trip. It was like a big deal. Every kid was so hyped. I was like, oh, let's write a happy song about the field trip. So I started doing some of that. But it was also at the time there was a new music theory teacher in town. We never heard about what is music theory, but apparently it's probably beneficial since I was playing piano. So like, oh, let's go take that class. On the very first class, I remember the teacher was like, oh, let's do some quick ear training exercise. I'm just gonna play something on the piano. Tell me what I played. And I think the majority of class had no idea what's going on. And there are only a couple kids, obviously, me included, can immediately tell him back what is going on. So after the class, the teacher said, you're wasting your talent here in this class. I mean, I teach a little bit, composing and songwriting. And would you be interested in taking like private lessons?
Oh.
Yeah.
So this was around high school?
No. Elementary school.
Elementary school
Elementary
age?
school, yes. We started early. I think it's 4th or 5th grade.
Oh my gosh.
So, and what he taught me and I think till this day is one of the most important things, that is how to write a melody. We will get into the contemporary music training later, because that was completely lost. How to write a tune, how to set music to lyrics. That's what he taught me. So that's how I got started. I think, fast forward a little bit. So middle school starts at 7th grade in China. And in 9th grade, every kid will go through a national exam to determine which high school you go to.
Right.
Which will, in turn, if you get into good high school, at 12th grade, we'll take another national exam, which determines the college. So the 9th grade, in many ways, is kind of the first test of your life.
Yes.
It's just that crazy. So I already got to middle school at 7th grade. Well, I was a very good student. I'm getting good grades. However, I think both my mom and I realized, well, if we have to be serious about academic work, we may have to take a break from piano lessons and music in general.
And just focus.
Yeah, because when she was like, well, maybe rather than weekly lesson, we can do bi-weekly. But it's just, we all know it's phasing out. And I was devastated. I was devastated. Well, there's only one thing I wanted to do. So I literally had a crazy idea. I said, is there a music school? And we didn't know. We called the theory teacher, my composition teacher. He's like, yeah, there is. It's the pre-college division of Shanghai Conservatory, one of the most prestigious, pre-college music schools. Starts at 4th grade, but the composition program starts at 7th grade.
Oh.
I was already at 7th grade.
Yeah.
He also had one of the teachers in the program. So he's like, let's go there and just visit the teacher and see what she thinks, whether we have potential or not. And that was already, I think, in October or November. The audition, which is the national audition, it was the next April. So we went there, we took the bus. It was a very long journey. We got there, I remember it was, it's on such a dark room. I was so nervous. So the teacher, Mrs. Ding, which I owe a lot to her, because she said, play some music for us, so I played something on piano terribly. Then she's like, well, what have you written? So I showed her some of the songs, some of the melodies that I've written. Oh, those are pretty good. And they said, let's do some ear training. So, play some intervals, tell me what the pitches are and all that. It's very Soviet, the former Soviet Union system, by the way. A lot of the, early Chinese music education came from that system. So she's like, I'll take you as my student. We study hard. She said, we have how many months? We have 4 or 5 months. Study with me, study hard. There's no guarantee, but let's do it. So I started taking weekly lesson with her.
Okay.
And then did the audition and got in.
Wow.
So because of that, I actually repeated 7th grade. But I started as a composer at the age of 13. Wow. As a composition major, but that's normal, by the way.
Is it?
It is normal there.
Oh,
a lot of the musicians that you encounter at Eastman, Chinese musicians, we all went through this system, the pre-college system.
Yeah.
Because in our belief, if you want to be serious, you want to be a professional musician, start extremely young, and not only you go to a specialized school at a young age. Yeah. Again, I think it has a lot to do with how Soviets did back in the day. I remember, my mom told me about that. So when all the kids, on the first day of school, when we were just moving into the dorm, by the way, it was also boarding school. They have all the parents have a meeting with the administration, and the guy, the dean, I think his first words is, "Welcome. This is a one-way ticket. Your kids are on a one-way ship.
Wow.
Either you make it or not." The reason being, because at the music school, we don't teach the regular curriculum, the academic curriculum, because half of the day are practice time. So if you fail at this school and you have to go back to normal, so you have no school to go to because you did not learn it.
Just intense focus.
Yeah. So and some kids dropped out. I hope they're doing well. So it was incredibly stressful although I think most kids doesn't know much. Because we were 13, 14-year-old boys, living in a dorm, 6 boys in one room. So who knows? Yeah, we don't know anything. But yeah, that's how I started. And so the program, we started with melody, little piano pieces, piano suites, art psalms, little chamber duets, trio, and eventually I think on my senior year of high school, I wrote a string quartet. That's about as big as it went. But musically, obviously they tell, you start to get a sense of what academic music composition is about, but obviously they're not, at that age, who knows what you're writing. No one's pushing you to say, hey, this is the 20th century. But, there certainly when you get to high, like 10th, 11th, 12th grade, you start to seeing, what's happening, especially, what's happening at the conservatory level, what you expect to write. So you start to get a taste of what we call contemporary music, contemporary arts music. So, obviously there are pros and cons for that kind of training. The pros, you're very focused, it has an amazing ear training program. The cons are, you didn't get experience, life, I guess.
That's so interesting. I hadn't realized you had gotten into composition so early. And just what you were saying, there's pros and cons to both sides of intense focus versus a more broad
at a very
education.
young age,
But it is, I think it's hard because you're missing out on other things as well. So when you were towards the end of your boarding school, so that went all the way through high school,
yes,
is that right?
Yeah, 12th grade, yeah.
So then when you were considering what came next for undergraduate degree, were you looking at schools in China? Were you looking at schools in America? What was the audition process and selection process like for that?
Obviously I was, applying. I applied for the Shanghai Conservatory. I also went through the audition there, but I think there was a desire at the time. I kind of just wanted to see the world. When you're kind of on the rebellious age, you want to leave. You want to leave as far away as possible and see what's going on.
Yeah. Had you been out of China before?
Only once, and it was at the end of 11th grade.
Okay.
That summer, I came to the United States visit, and actually, what's funny is I attended a summer camp, music summer camp at Eastman, hosted by Eastman Community Music School.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was blown away. The environment, the resources here, I was blown. So I was like, Shanghai Conservatory is great. It's also a great school, but I want to see the world. I want to apply for some of the so-called prestigious music institutions in the United States, including Eastman, because that's the place I at least visited once. Although the other school, I had no idea what they are. I just, kind of just researched online, say, oh, that's cool. It was very, very reputable. Listen to some of their teachers' music. Oh, sounds nice. Let's apply for that. So yeah, I ended up applying for, I would say 4 or 5 schools in the United States. I think, but in China, I would definitely apply for Shanghai Conservatory and was expect to get in. There is no guarantee if you attend pre-college, you automatically go there. You still go through the audition process just like everyone else, but you are obviously well prepared compared to the general people coming from kind of a general educational background. Eastman. I got accepted Eastman, although I got a better offer from NEC, but at the time, because I've been to Eastman, that's the only place I wanted to go. Again, just through heroic sacrifice of my family, because especially my mom, somehow we managed. I was depressed at the time. I was like, well, there's no way we could afford this. So I was literally, could not get up because you feel like the dream is there and it got crushed right in front of you. And I think my mom said something, well, we just go, we figure out if you don't go, it's something that you will regret for the rest of your life. So I think that touched me a bit. I actually got a little bit emotional right now. Thinking about that. So I say, well, you're right. I would regret it. So let's do it. But obviously, my family pretty much sacrificed everything for that education.
It's so important, that support system that
absolutely
you have. Because my parents did a lot for me to make it possible to go to Eastman and to have the opportunities that I did, even growing up. And like you were saying, your experience being able to go to this prestigious boarding school to focus on music and have that training at such a young age. But there is a cost to it, and parents do a lot to make it possible for people like us to...
especially most of the classical music. I think classical music kids, the parents have to, command, I feel.
Absolutely.
So they're the true heroes.
They are. Amazing. I wondered if you could share a little bit about just the application process for composition for anyone who's maybe looking to apply for composition particularly.
I'm sure it's different. You don't burn CDs these days. But at the time, you get you send in your school. So for the preliminary process, you send in the music you've written. I remember for Eastman it was 4 pieces, I think. So you submit a score, hard copy. I have to send everything through international mail, including a CD. Of those pieces.
And how do you got in performances of your pieces?
Obviously I had the advantage of being at a music school, so I got my friends together. Some of them were actually from live concerts. A couple pieces, or we just went to the recording studio at the conservatory, the college level, and we just recorded. Obviously, again, I had no idea what I was doing, but I was able to get a portfolio together, and we send everything. I think these days it's PDF and a link. But the essence is still the same. They want to hear hear your music.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think for that age, they are not expecting to hear, any masterpieces or any kind. I mean, if you have written masterpiece at that age, great. But I think they're just looking at potential and creative potential of young composers. What they have in their mind, what kind of voice they're expressing, even at that age. I had a song that I was very proud in our song I wrote in high school. I was still very proud till this day. All the other pieces, I made sure I'll make sure they never see the light of the day.
They're gone.
Yeah, definitely. It's gone forever. So
yeah. And what's the audition process like for composition? Because it's not the same as instrumentalist.
Right.
So how does it work?
So I only actually attended live audition for two schools. One is the Shanghai Conservatory, one is the Eastman. They could not be any more different.
Really?
Yeah. The Shanghai Conservatory, again, very much they don't want to hear your previous work. They don't care. They want you to write something on the spot.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So you go there. I think it was piano pieces and an art song. And I think it's two melodies. So they will give you a motive, like the first two bars.
Yeah.
And you give you 3 hours.
Oh
and
my
you
God.
write it right there.
They just leave you in a room and you just
Yes. 3 hours.
Oh my gosh.
So it was melodies, little piano pieces, and a song. So the song, they also have a start, like the first bar, and they'll give you the entire text. Yeah. So
Wow.
and then
No
you have
pressure.
the normal kind of your piano, and then the like an interview with all the faculty. Well, at Eastman, it's only the interview and the faculty and the piano.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you
there
don't
is
have
no
to have-
live writing part.
Yeah, on the spot inspiration.
I had no idea what I wrote, by the way.
That's intense. I
Yeah.
feel like it's so much pressure in that moment.
I think, I don't know any American school do that. So,
Gotcha.
and I don't think any European schools do that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it must be a very much,
unique.
again, a Soviet Union system.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. So at Eastman, what was your experience like there? Could you share a little bit about what the course looked like for a composition major?
We had a lot of coursework.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone does.
Yeah.
For sure. Obviously, you have your weekly lessons. At freshman year, you have kind of like a survey lesson.
Okay.
You can go through what is going on. What is 20th century music, contemporary music. They go through like all the masterpieces of the century, the required readings.
Yes.
So you actually have 2 lessons each week as freshman. But after that, you just go back to the normal lesson. You write something, you show it to your teacher, and he or she critiques it, and you go back to the drawing board. So that's a pretty standard. At Eastman, you do rotate your teacher every year
Okay.
as a requirement, and that's
Interesting.
great because. Let's be honest. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing as a high school, even at college level, as a composer. You had no idea. At least most people. I definitely had no idea what I was doing. So it's good to get different perspective.
Yeah.
You're not quite. You don't have to get locked into when you're saying, okay, this is kind of how I train composer, but get a broad perspective. I actually really much appreciate that. Academically, I was doing fine. I was a good student. But creatively, again, I was completely overwhelmed and lost because there is the world of contemporary music.
Yeah. I get lost in it as well.
Like, there's Charles Ives. Oh, that's so cool. There are the serialist composer. Oh my God, look at the math thing.
Yeah.
Oh, there's the more experimental avant-garde people. There are people who build their always like, oh my gosh, there are so many possibilities. Where do I even get started?
Yeah.
I was completely lost. And I wrote a lot because of that and failed a lot. And I think that's great. I think, and now looking back, if you're in an undergraduate program composition, just write a lot and fail a lot. That's,
Good advice.
I mean, how can you find your own voice if you don't, write a lot and fail? The other thing that, we will obviously transition, later talk about how I transition to the media world.
Yeah.
But is a contemporary music program, especially a program like Eastman, they are narrow, very much laser focused on one particular form of music making, that is the academic contemporary art music. And when you're only in a corner, and that's the only thing you see.
Yeah.
So at the time, and especially at Eastman, it was a very small undergraduate program, but we have a fairly, sizable PhD program.
Yeah.
So you see what those people are writing. So those are people you're supposed to be inspired to. That's the path you want to follow, the academic music path. Go to grad school, you go to academia. So I had a lot of doubts. Is this truly the music I wanted to write? But I was so laser focused, say, hey, in order to be a composer, that's the music. That's the type. It's the 20th century contemporary arts music, whatever that means. That actually means a lot. By the time, the more on the experimental side, all of that. So I was laser focused, but I already started to have a little bit doubt. But I was never brave enough or even have the courage or even confidence to question that, whether this is truly my passion. I just know I want to write music, I want to be a composer. To be a composer, this is the path you follow.
Were you always thinking at Eastman that you would go on to do another degree, or were you thinking of entering the musical career immediately? What were you thinking?
I always know I will go for another degree because that's the path, the academic path.
That you go for.
Yeah, you get your terminal degree, and you hopefully get a college teaching job, and that's your life. Get tenure, that's your life.
Yeah, because I was going to ask for composition. I wonder if, and you're kind of sharing it just right now, what is this known pathway of a composer? Is that what it involves?
That's the equivalent of an orchestral job.
Yeah. Okay. I was gonna say
is a job in the ivory tower.
Academia.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were pretty much set on just following that.
Yes. Okay. I was laser focused because that's the only path I know.
Yeah. So you were applying then in your final year for postgraduate programs?
Yeah, I applied for a bunch of programs. But I was ill prepared because, again, as I said, I wrote a lot and I failed a lot. I never had a piece that's truly polished.
Yeah.
So I got rejected from most of the so-called top programs. But I got also accepted by a few programs. But Buffalo stood out to me because it was a PhD program. And the funding for a PhD program is always greater than funding for a master program.
Absolutely.
So it presented me with a very, very good funding package. I met with my mentor, the advisor there, David Felder, and we immediately connected. Despite it being a music department, academic music department, that the only people there are theorists, music colleges, and composers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I decided to go there.
Going directly into a PhD program instead of sort of skipping over the master's part, how did that work?
You took a little bit more classes in the first 2 years.
So essentially you were getting both?
I don't have a master's.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're just able to bypass.
Right.
Oh, interesting.
At least that's how that program works.
Yeah.
I'm sure it works differently for a lot of schools. So I went from, surrounded by musicians since age of 13.
Yeah.
Really. By musician, I mean musician who play instruments to musicians who writes scholarly works. It was very, very different. However, because of that, I was able to now really dig into myself and really slow down rather than write like 10, 12 pieces a year. I wrote one piece a year. Really to dig down deep, say, hey, what is my voice? I guess, and I wrote a string quartet I was extremely proud of till this day. And then, because what's funny is it was my first year there, and the Arditi Quartet, which is one of the premier contemporary string quartet, they play a lot of extremely modern, like Fernie Hall is like they're one of their like most famous composer, the repertoire that they play. So I just wrote a string quartet that's pretty much not what they play. However, on the last movement, I had to bow down to them and wrote this like incredibly dark, convoluted, like full of notes, a page of notes, the notes of something. But the first two movements are very lyrical, very sparse, just all about harmony drifting in and out, has a melody. And I think Dr. Felder said something, pointed at the last movement, said, that's not you. You bow down to them, that's not you. Those are you. And that because all my colleagues at the time were, doing wild, like experimental stuff. I was very much an outsider because I was writing more traditional, music, traditional in the framework of, contemporary music. But I think having that encouragement was great because people have different interests. Write different types of music, and that's okay, and that's me, and that's not me, and it's okay to present to a quartet what's me, rather than what's them. I think that was very much a turning point in grad school. For me.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear you just speak about that process of discovering what your voice is. I feel like in classical music particularly, that can be really hard to find.
You still, it's a lifelong journey.
Of course, yeah. But I feel as an instrumentalist, I didn't think much until especially towards later on in education about what my voice was, because I felt very much like I was trying to reproduce what I was given or what was on the page. Composition, of course, is different because it's you're writing it yourself, but there's still that process of discovering.
Oh, absolutely. And it takes time and takes life experience.
And I think what you're also saying is that feedback from mentors and other people around you is so important, and really they can see into things that maybe you can't see immediately, of like, oh, this is you and this isn't really you, and dig into that. So that's really cool. I feel like there are two sections of your undergrad of exploring and just writing a lot and failing, and then really digging into finding more of what you wanted to do.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And the craftsmanship, and respect the craftsmanship, in grad school for sure. But another turning point in grad school was, I think my second or third year, I got into Aspen. I always said to people, there are two places on earth that are not real that I've been a part of. One is Eastman, the other is Aspen. Those places don't exist. They are utopia. But both of the mentors there are no longer with us, which is crazy. Mr. Stephen Stuckey and Sid Hawkinson, two people I only interacted for 2 months, but have made a lifelong impact. Sid was... by the way, he taught at Eastman for a long time, Sid, but obviously that's before my time. He was he was in his 80s, and he was the old style teacher who were extremely strict and will pay attention to every single detail, which I think a lot of younger professors these days, either they don't think those are important or they are afraid to say it. I think there's a little bit of that, but Sid is not afraid. I just remember when I first showed him, a score, piece I wrote. I think it's in 4/4, and when you're in 4/4, you write a quarter rest and dotted quarter rest, and you have an eighth note. You circle that dotted eighth rest. I never want to see that again, because it's supposed to be a quarter rest and an eighth rest. You don't dot that in 4/4. You dot that in compound meter. So wow, that's no one told me about that. That should be something I learned in 4th grade. But I think I could not. I met Sid later. He was teaching in Florida. I actually went there visiting once. As I said, since I met you, I will first of all miss you. I've never written a dotted quarter rest in 4/4 in my life.
Lasting impact.
Yeah, and that's great. I think that's something that I miss a lot. That kind of training. But the other influence of Aspen is I got to hear orchestral music every day. And most of the repertoire they play are late romantic pieces, because those are popular and beautiful and glorious.
Yes.
The Mahlers.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, how can I write that kind of music and be okay with that?
Yeah.
Which environment will support me to write orchestral music? Not the academic environment. Well, I mean, there are some big orchestral composers for sure, concert music world. Good for them, but those are far and few between. And in order to break into that American orchestra scene, I mean, that's like really one of the most, of course. And I think that's where the seed of, film music and media music planted in my head.
At Aspen.
I think they planted the seed, saying, hey, well, there is a field that you get to write that type of music quite a bit. As naive as that thought is, because, later on I realized that's not the case. But I was naive at the time. So I think that seed was planted there. But again, I was still very much laser focused on the academic path.
So you were doing Aspen At
It's
what
15,
point?
2015.
2015.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of years after Eastman, a couple of years into your doctorate.
Right.
Did that experience then shape the rest of your doctoral studies?
Not quite until the last month.
Okay.
But as I say, that seed has been planted. But
Yeah.
then I went back to taking comprehensive exams. Oh my
Yeah.
God, still have nightmares. Then the final year is you at least for Buffalo, which is nice. You don't have a paper, the gigantic research paper requirement. You just write a large scale piece. So I spent a year on that as well. But the goal is obviously to graduate and apply for academic positions.
Yeah.
Around the country. I do want to stay in the United States. I enjoy living here, so that was another complication we will get into later.
Yeah.
It's a great challenge.
Yeah.
So I went back to kind of the more laser focus on, despite the seed being planted.
So then, what happened in that last month?
In the last month, I realized there's no school that wants me.
As in for teaching.
Yeah, I know because I know my dissertation is ready. I'm ready to graduate. I think the last semester applied for every position I could find on higher ed. That includes the traditional tenure track assistant professor. That also includes all the 1 year replacement, all the adjunct positions. All the theory teacher 1 year, even one semester, all over the country. In the end, I feel bad for asking for recommendation letter in the end. Like, sorry, I'm applying for one more. And I got one interview that went nowhere. That's it. Never heard back from any other school. And that's okay, because that's very normal. I know people who are, I know some of my colleagues who got into academic position fairly quickly after graduation. Good for them, and they are very deserving, so they're incredibly talented. But it's normal to this is going to be a long process. You have to grind it out. I don't have the luxury to grind it out. So after you graduate, how student visa in this country works, you have 1 year to as you get training experience. After that, you either apply for job visa or you go home, right? So I have 1 year here after graduation.
Yeah.
Zero job prospect. And when you get to July and August, knowing school is starting in September, you still know. I mean, at least if I have any hope, that's it. I have to be realistic. And that's where that seed suddenly kind of came back to me. I think at that point I have to once again dig deep into myself. Say, why did I start writing music? Why did I want to write? What are the music that attracted me at first? That I say, oh my gosh, I want to be this. I want to write something like this. Is it truly the work of some 20th century serialism? Well, I'm giving like one of the most notorious examples. There are amazing 20th century, repertoire, but I thought about the songs of my childhood, the popular songs. Thought about what we call vernacular music, I guess. I thought about the beautiful melodies. I thought about the romantic symphony in Aspen that I heard every day. Well, now no one's telling me what to do at this point. You don't have a teacher, you don't have an environment around you. Yes, you have been in the corner for so long, but now you can count the corner and see the world a little bit. And I was like, well, I have a year. Go big or go home. Literally, you want to try this thing called, film. And by the way, at that time, I never know like what a film composer actually is, because these days film composer are like much more broader than strictly a film composer. But they say, film. I mean, I love John Williams. I love movie. Yeah, I love movie soundtrack. I love The Lord of the Rings. So all that. Yeah. Like, wow, you have 1 year and you have a chance to just have some fun, to come to the media capital of the world and just have some fun, have an adventure, right? That's, again, it's just the crazy idea, and it's just how naive I was. And to see what it is about. So in my mind, I was actually like, oh, I'm going to, kind of see what it is about. And I'll most likely go home and get some job, hopefully in a kind of corporation, because I can speak English. I think that's a skill, I guess, back home. Maybe, again, I actually don't know. Again, I was naive. Maybe make some money and come back, like apply for USC or something like that. And, that was literally what I was thinking. I actually had a friend at the time, Nathan Kelly, who was a very also incredibly talented composer. He was actually went through the reverse path. He came from the film work and wanted to pursue concert work. He's like, WEIJUN, have you had enough of school? You went through undergrad, you went through grad school.
PhD.
Yeah. You still haven't had enough school and you want to go back and come back to USC? It's like you go have fun. You go to Los Angeles. I mean, that was the final straw for me. Like, it's like, yeah, he's right. He's right. So what's funny is I presented my dissertation. I remember the dates very, very vividly. July 27th. On July 31st, 4 days later, one-way ticket to LNX.
Wow.
I know no one here. Don't know a single thing about film music. I don't even know how to write I don't even know it's called a cue, by the way. I don't know anything at all, but just here to have an adventure. Yes. Yeah. So, well, after I got here, obviously I had to, I started, find out what are the networking opportunities, try to get people's email addresses, try to send all the cold call emails. And obviously, no one get back to you. There are some the path that the kind of the aspiring film composer go through when they come to LA. One is the remote control internship. That's Hans Zimmer's production company. But I wrote to them. They never got back to me, and they really don't have to because I was no longer a student, so I can't even do internship because that has to be tied to your school curriculum anyway.
I see.
There's the Joanne K Music Service. That's where all the scores are prepared for orchestration and foreign stage. No, I can do that, but they never roll back to me. So all the kind of the traditional path were completely got nowhere.
Dead ends.
Yeah. So, but somehow one composer got back to me after. I still don't know till this day why he got back to me, by the way, because Philip Klein, one of the most incredible, talented, working young composer in the industry. He got back to me and said, "Oh, come visit. Come visit. Come take a look what this is about." Because I told him about my background, in the concert, because I'm interested in pursuing film, things like that. So I went to his studio in Altadena. But oh, that's your background, and I was like, well, obviously, I was very realistic. I'm not going to be able to be writing anything soon. I literally don't know what this is about.
Yeah.
But I come from a concert world. I can produce a score. I can do orchestration, I guess. It's like, oh, I'm an orchestrator. Well, I mean, he was humble. He didn't say, but he orchestrated on some of the biggest films. Most of the James Newton Howard films.
Wow.
Actually.
Those are good ones.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, wow. And I was like, well, can I, can you show me a little bit? It's like, well, if you're interested, I can take you under my wings. Oh, what does that mean? But that's how I got started.
What did it mean?
It means I become his proofreader at first.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I gradually he trained me up to be orchestrator. I still don't know till this day. I mean, every time when Phil and talk to each other, I was Phil. The only reason I'm still doing music is because of you. And Phil was like, "Shut up." But it is actually true. Yeah. It is very true. I was ready to quit at the time. After that year, if that year doesn't work out, I'm most likely won't be doing music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you had a hard timeline of you couldn't stay longer because your visa would expire.
Right. So I was like, okay. Produce a score. Well, I mean, you use Finale. I've used Finale since Finale 2000. Those contemporary. Have you seen those contemporary music scores? I can do that. Then I realized I do not know a single thing about the program. Because when you're in a school or in the concert world, you take your time with the piece.
Yeah.
You have many months or sometimes a year, especially in school, because you have the luxury. So all the stuff that we do are the most inefficient way to do it. And when I got there, I was like, oh, that's how I saw how people, copyists or orchestrator, just fly through that program. It's like, how do you do this? How do you do that? How do you do that? The first time I heard about something called Keyboard Maestro, which is a macro program. You literally hack into the program to create shortcuts that doesn't exist.
Oh, wow.
It's incredible. You heard about all the third-party JW plugins in Finale that can do just wonders. And I was like, man. And I think that's also when I first realized, the real school. Yes, I mean, even at the time, I think I was a little bit entitled at first because I was like, I come from concert world. I went to prestigious music programs. I think that first couple months when I saw how industry people work here, completely just those kind of entitlement just went away very quickly. I would say, I know nothing. That's first, and the real school is the school of the real world. Yes. Yeah. So I became an orchestrator at first. Modern film orchestration is not the piano score to a film. It's not the John Williams stuff because everything these days are produced. Your job is take the demo from the composer, which are usually produced already fully mocked up, but whatever it needs to be recorded, you translate that onto score. It's not one-to-one. You can't say, oh, it's already written. I just copy and no. You still have to work things out because when you're programmed, you're not programming as flute one, flute two. You're programming as ensemble. Especially in the film world, you have to burn through so much music. So you sort those out, how to rewrite their strings. And woodwinds are often not programmed because especially in loud action music, you can't hear in the mock-up anyway. But on stage, it will make a difference.
Yeah.
So how do you fill in the woodwind parts? So all that I learned that. But the other thing is because Phil has trained me and I was start to work for him, I got to see the programming, the MIDI programming of some of the working composers in Hollywood. And that was everything because those are the textbooks. Yeah. And I said, oh, this is what MIDI programming is about. This is what sample libraries are. This is what sequencing is. And I think our mind, at least my mind at the time, I hope this generation of composers are not like, but my mind was like MIDI, oh, ew, sounds horrible. Oh gosh, it sounds, because our mind of MIDI like got stuck in kind of like this general MIDI playback.
Yeah.
When I heard, oh no, this is what modern sample library can do. I was completely speechless. I was like, oh my gosh. You need to buy those things. These things are not cheap. You need to get your computer, you need to get your keyboard, your controllers, all that. And, again, for no reason, out of the goodness of his heart, Phil gifted me. That controller is still his. He also gifted me a MIDI keyboard. That was no longer that one, but it's a smaller one. He gave me a desktop computer. It's no longer this one, but he gave me He gave me a desktop computer because he was retiring his old one. He said, you can take it. Got me the computer screen. I don't even have money to buy a computer monitor. He gave me everything to get started. So take that if you're serious. So, and then all the money I earned, I make sure they got invested back to starting gather softwares.
Equipment, so important.
Yeah, and then looking at the MIDI from those composers, some composers label their tracks very well, and those are helpful to me. So I know, oh, that sample library sounds great in his mockup. What's that company called? Let's be honest, there are also some demos doesn't sound great.
Yeah.
Why doesn't this sound great? Look at the programming. So I started to dissect those while I was proofreading and working on score, just to gather intel how to actually produce music.
For any composer who's maybe trying to get a start in this media film composing world, could you maybe list out some key pieces of equipment that you think are really helpful to get started on?
You need to get a computer.
Yeah.
Hopefully a good one. I would say like at least a MacBook Pro level computer. Then you need to get a program called Contact.
Okay.
You have to get that. A lot of people say, oh, I can only use the free version. If you're serious, get the full version. Get some of the big orchestral sample libraries to get started there. I'm not going to endorse a company or other here, but there are some of the well-known orchestral libraries. So at least get your strings, like one string library that you really like, one string. I would say that's the first thing. Then you fill your brass and woodwinds, I guess, after that. So slowly, gradually build up your tool set. Yeah.
I think that's really helpful. And I think just for people who don't even know where to start, it's just nice to have an idea of, okay, these are some pieces that I can begin to build on.
Right. Then you need a MIDI keyboard, I guess, and a controller, fader controller. That's probably, the entry level point has never been any lower. Because of the competition of these companies, sample library companies, the price have been driven down so much. The sale season during Black Friday has been insane. Well, it's still not cheap for a college student, I will say, but it's definitely no longer the unattainable goal of the past that you have to invest like 5-digit amount of money at first. No, you don't. You can get some decent song library in a couple $100.
Yeah. So in this period of learning from Phil and just gleaning all this information about this new world that you're entering, I wondered if you could share just a little more about that transition period of entering the career field. So was that a full-time job? How are you supplementing your income? And
so every media composer in this town, and pretty much sure, unless there are some, video game company has full-time composer and stuff, but most of the composers working in the field are essentially freelancers. So yeah, you build your income from taking gigs.
What kind of gigs? What do those look like?
Well, I mean, ideally those will be writing gigs. You write and they pay you for whatever you write. If you're on the film, you get a package, all of that. But you supplement with, if you do music preparation, if you do orchestration, those are supplemental income that you can get. There are also passive income potential. Some of the union gigs in orchestration will generate what they call secondary market musician fund money. And then if you're on the traditional media project, which is film and TV, not games, that you're able to what they call file Q sheet, and performance royalty organization like ASCAP or BMI will collect royalty for you. So that's another big part. So I would say, those are about like the biggest income sources. So,
and those are the things that you were doing at that time period?
I was doing orchestration for them. The first year I was not getting any writing opportunity.
So then how did you get into game studio music and more of what you're doing now?
Another long story. So,
please, go for it.
After that year, I applied for what they call O1 visa year, which is, oh my God, it has a term called, I think it's called Aliens of Extraordinary Ability. It's
the name? Oh my God.
That's what it's called. Oh my gosh. You have to prove that you're so accomplished, and you have to prove that you will be very accomplished. I'm not going to get too much into this, and it's a giant hurdle. That's all I'm going to say.
Absolutely.
But that's also 2020. That's the year of 2020. And I applied, and it took many months, and I could not work during those months. I was literally, I had to burn through savings at the time.
Because the application process was so intense.
While you're waiting for the result, you can stay in this country to wait for the result, but you cannot work during that period. So I was like, well, most likely this visa is not coming through at that time. I mean, some of the visa program literally got suspended at that time. Somehow was not among them. So I was like, there's no way I'm getting this visa anyway. I'm most likely going home. But I was in a better position when I was, graduating. Well, now I know this media world, music world. I can't go back to China. I'm probably gonna, the media capital in China is Beijing. So I was from China, so I said, well, I will probably move to Beijing and basically start what I did in LA, like networks. So basically, start from fresh, just in a different market. But I know, this is something I'm passionate about. Like I want to pursue this career. Also, by the way, during the first year, I also worked for him as an orchestrator. His name is Chen. Again, one of the most, oh my God, talented composers ever. Chad posted something on Facebook that I am on the jury of a Chinese film scoring competition, something like that. It's like, it's like, that's interesting. I was like, well, I mean, I can't work anyway, so let me write something and submit. And if I somehow become finalist, when I go home, I can go to Beijing. So that competition is in Beijing. I can go to Beijing and get to know some people, so I got a head start. That was literally, again, how naive I was. So it was scoring a short, 3-4 minute animation. At that time, I already have, a little bit tool set going on. I mean, I obviously did not have, what I have right now, but I have the core orchestra gig. And animation is mostly orchestral anyway. So, I wrote this, I scored that short animation and sent it off. Somehow, the visa actually got approved after a very, very long, grueling wait. I did not know how that happened. It got approved, so I'm not going home. And somehow I won that competition.
It all happened.
So my original plan did not work out. the funny thing is, Chad, it was a completely blind jury process. Like we only have like a number on all the submissions. So when Chad found out it was me, I didn't even tell him like apply for this. He was obviously very happy for me. And then what's funny is also when I knew the news, I also called Phil. I said, Phil, I mean, I won the competition. So I'm like, oh, I knew it a week before you. Chad told me about it. Oh, okay. So yeah, but because of that, that competition was hosted by Upstart, really a brand new company and a brand new, I would say, business practice in China. That's the music management, like an agency, basically, Lei Cindy Music Management, and their founder and. Zhang Lei, because I won that, we got acquainted. Because he is also starting out as a company, I think he saw some potential in me. So at that point, he already signed some very established composer in China, but I think he saw some potential. He said, "Well, I would like to sign you onto the artist roster."
Oh wow!
Of our, so I manage you exclusively in the Chinese market. I was like, well. Can I? I mean, at that point, I've never written music for a single game. Because most, by the way, the biggest obviously clients in China are the game studios.
Yeah.
Mobile game scene is absolutely gigantic there, and there are lots of aspiring studios who are trying to make the console and PC games there. So I've never wrote it, but it's like, no, that's okay, you will be fine. All that. But anyway, long story short, I got signed by Lei, and soon the clients come, and I have to learn things on the job.
Yeah.
And but apparently I did a decent job did decent enough. The clients kept coming back.
Yeah.
And bigger clients started to get to know me, and that's how this game stuff just roll down. It just happened quite organically, really. Yeah. But I would say the first couple projects you definitely learning the fire.
Yeah. Trial by fire.
Yeah, for sure. Because there's something that I definitely I think it took me, I would say, quite a few months, maybe a year after I'm fully kind of transition from orchestration to writing. Is to realize the quote again. It might not everyone would agree this, but I really felt that I realized that my entire music production has changed. Is concert music is written, commercial music is produced. What that means is when you're producing you're doing commercial music, you're not thinking flute 1, flute 2, violin 1, violin 2. Well, you still have to think orchestrally in order to produce something that sounds convincing enough, but you need to produce something that smells like money. It has that production sound. You listen to all the sound playing on the radio, on Spotify. It has that sound. As unnatural as it is. Some orchestra completely there's no way a live orchestra will sound like something like that.
Yeah.
Some of the modern film music, because they are so heavily a lot of string section are double tracked. So you have 40 string, you have 80 string all of a sudden. So all those techniques, they are producing whatever the sound you want to get. The medium is, it's not performance art, it's recording art.
Yeah.
So whatever the sound you need to get, we can get it. You don't think about, is that possible? You know what I mean? So I think that took me some time, because I was, again, trained so much in the concert world. It took me some time to realize that. But once I realized that, I think everything kind of clicked for me.
And does that just open up more possibilities of what you can compose? Or how does that affect your composition process?
It teaches me to get even more tools, especially those what we call production ready sounds, the loops, those textural libraries, those synth pads. How do the synthesizers? I never know a single synthesizer, but now it's like a huge part of the modern production sound, and I have to learn those, on the spot. I mean, obviously you're not a professional mixer, but you have to learn some parts of it in order to deliver a great sounding demo to the client. That some client might even just use it directly. So how to get there? Well, there are plugins. What are those plugins? What is compression? What is EQ? What is limiter? What is a maximizer? I mean, it's everything you learn on the job.
What does it look like when a client comes to you with a brief or with a job? So do they present to you this is the media that I have, this is the game that I have that I want to be scored, and then what happens next?
I think it's different from traditional media and games. So the traditional media, obviously, for a film, they give you the film. You score it, you spot it, you know which part needs music, and usually the films has temporary tracks, temp music. They already cut through either the editor or the director already has some temporary music in it, so they can get a vibe, you know, what's going for. So that's really you score it. In game, it depends. Some of the larger games you're more like, but game is more involved because there are different types of music. There is what they call the ambient kind of background music. That's like a character is exploring, so you hear something. There's the more kind of just traditional what they call cutscene. And you know, when you get to a story point, there will be a scene that get played out, and that's just scored just like every scene in a movie. Right? And then there are what they call combat music, which is usually where you're engaged with some like boss or tough enemies. So I think those are the three big genres of video game music, and they're interactive in many ways. A brief would be as simple as happy music, or as involved as like 3 pages for like a 2-minute track. It range from a lot. They will try to describe what they want. They will give you some background of the character, if it's about character or the scene that they're setting. Obviously, if it's a cutscene, you get the video. They will give you reference. Again, so maybe from some other games, or maybe from usually from other games, or maybe from movies even. Say, that track kind of works in this context, so we wanted something that's similar to that. Reference music is another tricky thing that I have learned, because obviously they liked certain things about it. You cannot write something that's too similar, but also not like deviate from too much. So you really have to tell like, what do they like about that reference track? What is really working for them? And what is not working quite so well? Things like that. That really also took me. I don't think I'm there yet at all, but definitely I feel more comfortable knowing, when I hear reference track, okay, I kind of get an idea what they wanted. That also took some time and training, experience, And I think that's one of the biggest difference between concert music and commercial music. Concert music, you write it. I mean, maybe you have a teacher that will critique you, but once you're out of school, you write it.
Yeah, you're very free, I suppose.
Right.
Whereas this
is a collaborative effort, and you're definitely not on the top of the chain. In the film, you work with director, and obviously, what the director says is everything. Because the goal in the end is get approved and get the paycheck. As cynical as this sounds. In the same thing with the game. So you really have to read people's mind and know. It's kind of almost like you have to have some people skill to know what's going on. And no one likes revision. Let's be honest. I have never met a single person. I enjoy rewriting the same thing over and over
just to make them happy.
Right. But it's unfortunately revision just part of it.
What would be the average of how many times you generally go back and revise for a client?
So again, it depends on the client. Films can get very maddening. I'm just going to say it, because films get recut a lot. So you have to do something called conform. Especially people like at my stage, we don't have usually, on some bigger production, there's a music editor that does the job for you, or you have assistants. I'm mostly doing conform by myself. I mean, I worked on like 2 films, like a decent size, bigger budget films. And whenever there's a recut coming in, they're like, we only cut like 2 seconds here, 5 seconds there. And it's very easy to fix. But the thing is, music doesn't work like so. You cut it there. Let's move that sound. No, the music phrase was completely destroyed. So I have to basically rebuild how the music flows from this phrase to the next. If you cut 2 seconds, it's going to be a big change. Rather than a small change. That's also, if you pay attention to movie score, there are a lot of weird, especially when you push to a certain thing. If it's in 4/4, you will hear a lot of weird 5/8 or 3/4 at the end. That's because a conform has happened. Just pay attention. And it's because the deadline's tight, you have no time to, completely reconstruct. So just the last push just got just a little bit weird, either truncated or elongated.
I have noticed differences between when I listen to the soundtrack of a film and then when I'm actually watching the scene on film, and I'm like, this part was cut here, and it's interesting. But I hadn't thought much about the impact on the composer of, maybe this is what they wrote, and then, they had to completely shift things around to make it work.
Conforms are a nightmare as always. But also there are some more like rewrites. And for games, usually things go to version 3 and 4 pretty common, I would say. Some of the more kind of maddening track I've written, I think there was a trailer it's called got to version 12. So I mean, between each version, some of them are smaller changes, some of them are just completely rewrites.
Yes.
So that also depends.
Yeah.
Some composers do the dotted system, so if it's like version 1, they have a small change, they will do version 1.1, 1.2. If it's a big, they will go up to version 2. I think it's nice, but for me, I just, it's all just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
That's all. Again, everyone works differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference between writing for more of the classical world versus the media world, and having the space maybe to write whatever versus having these briefs and guidelines and just that guidance to create something? How do you feel about either side?
I think now, because I've been doing this media world for a while, I actually enjoy having a big guideline.
Yeah.
So
It helps me focus.
You know where to start at least. I think nothing is more terrifying than staring at a blank piece of paper, I guess.
For sure.
Or a blank piece of screen. So having a little bit guideline is always helpful. I think I'm getting more and more comfortable. Now, if I'm going back to the concert world, I might be terrified.
Because as a musician who's just played what was given to me, I always found the world of composition so nebulous and kind of scary, because I'm like, how do people even come up with these ideas? And I feel like having at least a starting point I would find helpful. But then again, when you're having to recreate all of these different things, especially when you're having like reference music and stuff, how do you bring in that creative aspect to every single different project?
Still, you still get into it, really. The reference music will give you a guideline. It will kind of help you to know what the director or the supervisor will think about it. But in the end, it's you still write your stuff. If it's a film, you get into the characters, you get into what this scene is about. If it's a game, if it's a cutscene, it's the same thing. But if the game, if it's an environment, okay, what's this part? Well, how would the player feel if certain kind of music is played? How would I want the player to feel at this point? There's this boss. Is this boss menacing, or is it just evil and twisted? When you're fighting it, you want to you want to feel the excitement, but do you want to feel something else? So, still, I think in the end, just getting to human emotions. What do you want the audience, or do you want the player to feel at that moment? That's something I think about a lot.
And I think it really comes across. You were showing me some of your work as I was setting up, and it's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Stunning, and so interesting just to hear, just from the brief descriptions you were telling me, the influences of what the person was looking for and how you integrated it into the music. It's just really cool.
Thanks. I think there's always the saying that the grass is not greener on the other side. Coming from concert world, you think about the film composer so glamorous. It's definitely not a glamorous job. You're in long hours sitting alone in the studio. And it can get very stressful. Deadlines can be insane. So the grass is definitely not greener. But I do find it very fulfilling, at least personally right now, when you have when you go to a recording stage, when the thing got mixed and you hear what you have done, when the thing got released, when you see how it works with the picture, and hopefully, the audience feels something at the moment. It is a great feeling. It is absolutely great. And those moments remind you why you are in this.
That's why I love film music and media music, because I think it's so good at doing that, making the audience feel something and really being able to have a storyline that you can get into. I think it is really meaningful.
Absolutely. And some the most masterful film score, they remain after the film is long over. That's what people recall that film. They recall those iconic themes. Again, we're speaking of John Williams.
Absolutely. Right? It's very lasting. So what does your career look like now? I know you're mainly doing game music.
Right. So I'm working on a big action RPG right now with Timmy Studio, which is a subsidiary subsidiary of Tencent Games. That's the big project I've been involved for a long time, while I'm also taking on some other games. So right now I'm pretty much transitioned out from the orchestration and music preparation world. I'm writing full time. Just writing. But video game is obviously the bread and butter right now, but I'm definitely looking for opportunity in traditional media as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that what you're hoping to
I want to do everything.
straddle?
Yeah, I think
things?
for sure. And I think the media composer these days, it's normal for everyone to do a bit of everything. You're expected to. I think another part I'm really trying to get into and learn a little bit is music production. It's very like I'm talking about like songs. Those are just such a valuable skill that I'm not quite there yet. Especially I mean less so the films here, but in a lot of Chinese films actually. The composer score it, and they also write the song. So if I know how to do both, I obviously will have a more competitive advantage. I don't know how to do both yet, so things I'm still kind of learning, and so it's a process.
Absolutely.
And keep building up, the tool set. It's a never ending journey. For sure. I enjoy doing games a lot. I did not play much game growing up, not because I did not like them, because I was practicing piano. If you're playing a lot of video games as a classical musician growing up, something is wrong. But now I actually start to get into a lot of games, and mainly, I mean, just seeing how amazing the interactive storytelling can be. I mean, I definitely gravitate towards some of those Japanese big RPG like Final Fantasies, those kind of games that just it has a grand story that you're interacting with. Those games, the single player epic campaign, those kind of, and see how music is being used, and it was very eye-opening.
That's cool. I mean, it's educational when
for sure.
you can get both. Wow, that's fascinating to hear about this whole world. And I think a lot of people who are more in the classical music space might not have a lot of understanding about what it's like behind the scenes.
And vice versa, by the way.
Yeah, so I appreciate you sort of opening the curtain a little bit and giving us a glimpse in.
I think the last thing I want to say is, because as I said, I was in the corner, but once you're out of the corner, you see, people come from in the media world, come from all different corners. There are people who come from classical background like me. People come from band background. A lot of them, people who were songwriters before, so there are all sorts of music making, and they're all legit. Not one is above any other.
Thanks for saying that. I think that's really important.
Well, I mean, it's hard to produce a song,
Yes.
They never think, I can, I can write like super complex, it doesn't mean you can produce a song. It's difficult. It's its own world.
Well, and I just love seeing in your story, you kind of talk about this naivete of not really knowing what you were getting into at each stage, but just going with these ideas. Like even in your elementary school days of I want to do music. Can I find a school that would just teach me music? And then, coming to LA with a one-way ticket and not even really knowing what you're getting yourself into, but just jumping in for the adventure anyways is really inspiring.
Yeah, thanks. I think what persisted through this journey is the love of music, really. When I know I cannot do music from elementary school to middle school, I say, okay, there is a way to do it. When I know after getting nowhere in the academic world, I say, well, maybe that's the end of music, but I can't quit music. That's why I say I have to find a way. So I think that's kind of the theme is, I just have to do it.
And finding your way. And just at every point.
There's some kind of survival instinct.
And I can understand the difficulties of visas. I was living in London and trying to figure out getting a visa there.
A friend of mine is applying for that, the ability visa in the British version, and it's even, not saying the American version is easier.
None of them are easy.
The British version is even harder.
There is so difficult. And so you were really faced with very big hurdles at a lot of these stages. And you were even having the contingency plans, figuring out what you would do instead.
Those are kind of, I wouldn't say they are very set, contingencies. They're just, maybe I could have done
But it's cool to see how it's just unfolded for you and how you've been able to make this life for yourself that's so interesting and that you seem to really enjoy and be up for.
if 5-6 years ago when I was at the end of my grad school, if you say that I am making a living in Los Angeles writing music, I will say you have to be kidding me. So I'm very grateful, and I absolutely did not do this alone. Obviously, the mentors, the friends, the families, the sacrifices, they're all it would not be possible without.
Absolutely.
Without any, without them.
So important. Amazing. Well, I always end my episodes with a quick rapid fire question and answer section. Sure. So just however you're feeling on the day.
Okay, I'm ready.
Great. So who is your favorite composer? Right into the deep end.
Just for today.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was actually listening to his music before you came over.
Oh, nice.
I was a Japanese game composer. His name is Nobuo Uematsu.
Okay.
He was the composer of Final Fantasy. From Final Fantasy 1 to 10, especially. I love his music.
Beautiful
so,
work.
Absolutely, especially 6 and 7, 8 and 9. I think the theme of 10 are amazing. If you know how to write a tune, you know how to write a good tune, and it's not easy to write a good tune.
Yeah. Well, and that goes right back to what you're saying. Your French teacher taught you.
It's hard to write a good tune, and if you know how to write a good tune, Hollywood will love you.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, but it's also as difficult.
Yeah. This is totally not rapid fire, but do you just have any piece of advice for someone on how to write a good tune?
Oh no, I don't. I would say internalize it, sing it. That's all. Just whatever comes out, improvise a bit. Yeah.
Just fine.
Just let's try, improvise, sing it, internalize it, and hopefully it will be good.
Amazing. Great. Okay. Favorite piece of classical music?
I will say it's between Ravel and Mahler. Definitely the late Romantic and the Impressionist kind of a period, because those are my jams. Today I will say Mahler 6, the slow movement, the third movement.
Oh, very nice.
It was just, it oscillates between all the minor, major chord. Like you can feel his struggle, and there's that triumphant end. I don't know why suddenly it spoke to me today.
Can never go wrong with Mahler.
Right.
How about your favorite movie soundtrack and or game soundtrack?
Again, for today.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to name every John Williams. But for today, I'm a little bit hesitant to, but I'm going to stick to the theme because that's what I've been listening. I would say Final Fantasy 7. And I know people say 7 is, the 6 is more like technically more complex than music. I agree. But there are just those themes in Final Fantasy 7 that are just so endearing. I think once again it goes back to the melody. The Aerith theme, Tifa's theme. They're just so incredibly endearing. I would say for today, I would say Final Fantasy 7. And as you know, as some gamers know, Final Fantasy 7 is going through a remake. They already have a remake, and there is another game called Rebirth. And the new team that did arrangement also come up with some new tracks. They did a phenomenal job, and they definitely carry on. I know Uematsu was also supervisor on that. So definitely, if you have never checked out, I would say go check out Final Fantasy 7 remake soundtrack. And the opening cinematic cutscene, like how they handle it, it's masterful. It gave me goosebumps just speaking about that.
Yeah.
But on the other day, I would say Jurassic Park and E.T. So
both classics, all good.
Yeah.
What is a book that you keep coming back to? So either you reread it or...
So I'm going to be ashamed. I'll admit I'm not a big reader.
That's okay.
I didn't read a lot. But I would say a book that I started reading recently, actually. It's called Every Good Boy Does Fine by Jeremy Dank, who is a pianist. It's basically an autobiography. He talked about his upbringing. I'm only a few chapters in, but he talked about his earlier piano lessons.
Yeah.
How his teacher teaches him about what is a dissonance and the resolution. And he has such an amazing, just charming way to describe his life events. Very humorous at times. So I really enjoy reading that. I think I should read more. I guess that's the story.
That's cool. It sounds really interesting, especially for people maybe in composing.
For sure, I think for every classical musician will relate to in some way. It's a very fun read.
Is the title is that referring to the notes of the staff?
Yes, very much. And he talked about that in the preface. He's a great writer.
Amazing.
An amazing pianist for sure.
Who's a musician you really admire and why?
I'll say Jacob Collier.
Okay.
I just think his talent level, I think everyone said it, is on another stratosphere. That's for sure. His ears are, the harmonic sensibilities are all over this world. But also, he has just such a passion. He has those tours, he has those audience choir that he conducts. Just a great music ambassador, I think. And he obviously cross genre with a lot, with jazz, with the kind of popular music, and with really his own kind of stuff. It's very hard to describe it with his music, but I would say it's nothing like I've heard before. And seeing some of those transcription and how he talks about music.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say Jacob Collier. Big fan.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
What would you say is the most useful app on your phone?
Well, the most useful app on my phone is a Chinese app called WeChat.
Oh,
because
yes.
Because that's how I communicate with the clients.
Well, there you go.
Yes,
Very practical.
I don't have any social media app on my phone on purpose. I mean, I still check it, but occasionally on the computer, but I intentionally not have it on the phone.
I'm sure you save a lot of time.
I know I would not be able to restrain myself to scroll.
Yes.
So I just say let's just not install them. Yeah.
I think it's a wise practice.
Oh well, maybe.
And finally, if there's one resource, a book, a movie, a song, a piece of equipment, or an app or anything that you feel is just really beneficial to somebody that they should check out, what would it be?
Can I say something controversial on that?
Sure.
The best resource is the real world.
Ah.
Yes, you can read and you can watch YouTube tutorial. You can do all that, but if you never step out and go into the real world and do that, nothing would have happened. If I never come to LA, nothing would have happened. Yeah, the real world, and it will humble you. It is scary, but it is adventure. So learn from the real world.
Amazing. And that really echoes a lot of what you've been saying the whole time of how you've been learning in the real world on the job.
As someone who was in school forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's beneficial to get out there and just do it. Well, I so appreciate all of your time.
Thank you for your time, really.
Oh, no, my pleasure. Your story is so fascinating. I really feel like anyone can glean a lot from what you've had to share and just your experience. I'm really inspired by your just jumping in attitude and facing it like it's an adventure. I love that perspective. Yeah, well, it may sound more glamorous than it is, but yeah, I mean, have an adventure. I think that's also something I would say to I don't know if I'm supposed to leave some words for the. I mean, well, I was gonna say if there's just a last piece of advice you wanted to leave with listeners, what would that be? Well, first of all, I'm not that old, so I'm not that wise. But if I can, from my personal experience, I will say, if you're graduating from a music program, if you're lost and not know what to do, that's fine. Everyone is. And so, go out there. And if you can't find anything after school, it doesn't mean the world ends there. The world is just starting in front of you. It's scary. And now I'm saying this back because, at the time it was definitely scary. But be mindful, there are opportunities. You just have to find them. Be persistent, But at the same time, I was reading about, Chris Bauer, who just won an Oscar about The Last Repair Shop. And it was he was talking about, I think, to paraphrase me, saying music education is not about, producing musicians, it's about producing human beings. And I think whatever happens after, your, music education, whether you still remain in the field of music or do something else, I think the education you got is going to serve you very well because of the discipline, the craftsmanship, the playing together, singing together. That aspect is very rare. It does not find any other form of education, and I think it will serve whoever you are very, very well. Amazing. I think that's beautiful. If you could just leave us with how people can connect with you and what you do, if people want to check out any of your music, how can they find that? Just go on my website, WEIJUN'S.com. So maybe you will just put a link. I'll link to all the resources and where you can I would think, there are some demos there if you want to check out. So, cool. Amazing. Well, thank you so much. It's been amazing to hear your adventure. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. For having me on. Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Orchestrating Your Career podcast, and a big thank you to WEIJUN for sharing his composition journey and experiences. If you enjoyed this episode, then give this video a like, and leave a comment below about what you took away from WEIJUN'S interview. If you're listening on Spotify, it would also be a huge help if you could leave the podcast a review. The resources mentioned in this episode and where you can connect with WEIJUN and listen to more of his music are all linked below. You can find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other platforms, as well as get more frequent updates on Instagram. To watch videos of all the episodes and get extra behind-the-scenes content, check out the YouTube channel Orchestrating Your Career. Subscribe so you don't miss anything. Share this episode with a musician or anyone else you think might be interested, and stay tuned for more episodes to come. After a year since starting the Orchestrating Your Career podcast and 20 episodes now up, this is officially the end of season 1, but there is so much more to come. We'll pick back up again in the new year with many more fantastic guests sharing their own musical journeys. So I really hope you stay tuned for season 2 and that you have an amazing rest of your year. For now, I'll leave you with this beautiful composition to finish out our episode and the season. So WEIJUN, take it away.